Live from the chicken wing capital of the world, Buffalo, New York. You're listening to the Childcare Bridge podcast, your source for the best tips, tools, and tactics on how to market and grow your childcare center, ensuring total domination. Total domination. This is the Childcare Bridge, and this is your host, Michael Tasner.
Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Childcare Bridge. Today's topic is all about perception versus reality. So I want to give you an example of an experience that I recently had that has nothing to do with the childcare industry. But I wanted to share this because as I was sitting there, this exact topic came to mind, and I'm like, I need to do a podcast on this topic. So I just got back from Miami, Florida, and it was an amazing week. I was there learning with other marketing agency owners, and I love the theme because it's a topic that I talk about often throughout the podcast and just in general, and the topic was sharpening your axe. And on the final night, we were treated to a dinner at Hell's Kitchen. Now, if you haven't heard of Hell's Kitchen, it is owned by the great Gordon Ramsay. And Gordon has built this persona of being kind of crazy and mean and yelling and but having standards that are just way too high. I would think they're way too high, but for him, and it's relative. But he wants everything perfect food, decor, service, everything, down to the tiniest of detail. So when I walked in, I started noticing a lot of different things. I first noticed that we weren't greeted by someone that was happy to see us. And we are a big group. I mean, it was, I don't know the exact amount of money, but if I were to throw a guess, probably about a $5,000 dinner with the amount of people that we had. So it's hey, welcome to Hell's Kitchen. We're going to seat you over here. Okay, well. So first impressions at a restaurant obviously are big. The second thing that happened was the server came over very quickly and let us know that, just so you're aware, we don't have any of the people that you've seen on TV as a current chef. So it was almost and I'm not sure why she even mentioned it because no one asked, but it was if your perception was up here of I'm going to see one of these people that were on TV, because that's often what Gordon Ramsay does, is he'll do these shows and then whoever wins gets to be a chef at one of his restaurants. So she was almost managing our expectations a bit, but everyone was all excited, and then quickly the excitement started to dwindle. And it kind of continued to dwindle throughout the night. The service she tried to do the best that she could, but it was just absolutely dismal. It was a 3+ hour dinner. We didn't get our food, appetizers, for over an hour and 15 minutes. Drinks took almost 45 minutes. And it wasn't overly busy, which was crazy to me. So from my side, if my perception was celebrity chef, insane meal, every detail, knock it out of the park service, if that was my perception, and then my reality was really slow service, the food was good, but it wasn't anything that I would go back for, oh my God, there's certain restaurants that you're I need to go back tomorrow. This is definitely not one of those, at least the Hell's Kitchen Miami. So I've got my perception here and I've got my reality over here, and they kind of met somewhere in the middle, but the reality was this was not nearly as good as I or anyone else was hoping. And what that ended up doing was having a ripple effect. So a couple of us left 1-star or 2-star reviews. We told a whole bunch of other people. They were hey, how was dinner? We're nah, average. So now they're telling other, it has that ripple effect. So I wanted to share this story with you because I need you to take a step back and look at what is the perception from a parent of their expectations. What have you promised them from the beginning? Have you promised daily updates? Have you promised weekly photos? Have you promised emergency calls if needed? meaning, and when I say emergency, not an emergency at your center, but maybe you were part-time, but you needed an extra day because you have to go in and work, or you have an emergency with one of your other children. What are all those things that you started to promise? And then what I want you to look at is how much of those things are you fulfilling? Now, a philosophy that I teach is this philosophy called sloppy success. And that is more of an approach of like, ship it. If you're not perfectly ready, let's still rock and roll, because a lot of centers, they get into analysis paralysis and down to every single finite detail before they're willing to launch. And then what they don't realize is that, let's say they were supposed to launch August 1st, and now they decide to postpone to September, and then it goes to October. And those 2 months, let's just say you lost $20,000 of revenue in each. Like, now you're way behind the 8 ball because you wanted every little thing perfect. So I have more of a mantra of ship it. Start moving the needle and then continue to improve thereafter. But if you've been around the block for any given time, I want you to go through an exercise where you audit all of the different things that your brand, your center, your directors, or you as the owner have promised. And I want you to literally just put them on one sheet of paper and list out every single thing. So we're going to have a Christmas party. We're going to have a graduation for all the pre-K. Every single thing is going to be organic, bilingual. Some centers are even trilingual. Like, what is everything that you've promised? And or even some of the things that have never been said but are considered what I would call an unwritten rule. How could it be a promise if it's an unwritten rule? My perception in walking into Hell's Kitchen was that there was going to be a celebrity chef and it was going to be spotless and have the best service that I've ever experienced. Not all that stuff is written down anywhere, but that was what I felt I should be getting. So maybe you never promised daily updates to parents, but on their side, that their perception was you said we're going to give you frequent updates. And you might be thinking frequent updates are once a week. They could be thinking it's once an hour. So I need you to list all of that stuff down. On the other sheet, I want you to take a look and see, of those that you've listed, which ones are you so far apart from that if you were to start to get called out on it, there would be some heavy issues. Example, you've promised cameras and that the parents, if there's ever an incident, they can have access to the cameras. On the other side, you don't even have cameras. That's a little bit of an issue. And go down the list. And what I want you to do is to then start to rank them and put the ones in order that are the farthest gaps. Which ones have the biggest gaps, like the camera example. If you have made it black and white that you provide a weekly report card, for example, and you've looked and said, well, geez, we do it like once, maybe twice a month. Now, just because a parent hasn't started to ask and say, where's this or where's that, it doesn't mean that that's not an issue on their mind. What we've been finding over the last 10 years in this industry is that the families that start to leave, they often don't even say anything because they don't want to rock the boat. So a lot of people, when they go to a restaurant, if your meat is over or undercooked, let's say it's overcooked, which was actually several people at our table. You're going to send it back. They're going to have to make a new steak or whatever your dish was from scratch because you can't magically thaw it out and have it be undercooked. And the concern is that, well, they're going to spit on my food because they're mad at me. Parents are so worried that something could happen to their child if they raise an issue. Now, I'm not saying that all parents are like that. I can tell you most are the exact opposite. But when we've been studying families that are leaving the centers that we work with, we do a kind of leaving the center survey. It's the little things that they're starting to cite that are becoming more and more prevalent. Now, there's the overarching big things. We had to move, my spouse lost their job, like those things are in there. But the things that we're starting to read and learn about are actually the small things. Thought we were going to get more frequent updates, and I feel like we have to beg for updates. I thought that we would have the cell phone number to the director, and he or she has never wanted to give out their information, so we have to formally send an email or submit a ticket if we want to have a conversation. And we thought this was a little bit more of a family type of environment. a little bit less of a corporate environment. Those are the kinds of things that we're reading on these surveys. Now, the reason that we're getting good information is that they're done after the fact, so they really have nothing to worry about. There's no retribution or anything like that. They can be completely truthful. And the results start to speak for themselves. And they have really started to be in that basket of perception versus reality. The parent was thinking one thing, the reality was something different. But the core message here is that it's your job to make sure that anything that falls into the perception is handled. And how do you do that? You're not a mind reader, you simply ask. You start to do check-ins. You start to have, whether it's a monthly, a little simple net promoter score on a scale of 1 to 5. How likely are you to refer ABC childcare to another family, for example? You start to run things like that where then they can add feedback. You have your directors have more of an open line of communication. Is there anything that we promised you that you feel that we are not delivering? You start to get more direct. You ask questions like that. Is there anything that we have promised or that you have felt we promised, keyword felt, that you do not feel that we are doing? Are we in some way not upholding our end of the bargain? And when you do this, you're going to find all the little things that you can course correct. And often they are very little things. But if you look at it from the top level view, what does this actually do? Like, how does this exercise help you? Churn at a child care center can be an absolute killer. The average time that a family stays is well over 20 months. So if your tuition is $250 a week or $1,000 a month, that's $20,000 in revenue. Well, what if you could improve some things and that 20 number went up to 24 or 26? And now the average family is worth $24,000 or $26,000. And let's say you've got 100 enrollments. You just added $6,000 or $8,000 multiplied by 100 to your bottom line. Little hinges swing big doors. That's why I'm a big proponent in small incremental tuition increases. Little hinges swing big doors. So your homework assignment for today is to map out all the areas that you feel are perceived things that you've promised, and then look at the reality, and then see, are there any that have an insurmountable gap that you need to start closing? Once that's complete and you started improving and closing those gaps, deploy a net promoter score. Deploy a quarterly survey that's done either digitally or in person, and just ask those tough questions to solicit feedback. And what you'll find is that families will be happier, they will refer more families, and they will stay longer. And all three of those, happier, staying longer, referring more families, are money in the bank. Take action, make more money. Michael Tasner signing off. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I'll see you next week.